Correct, correct. Please hold on for a second.
So,
Please.
yeah, that's, I don't think I'm not gonna squeeze out of this one. That would be separate or a little bit. Okay. All right.
Yes, please hold on. Yeah. My connectivity is bad, so it doesn't know, so I can't take them yet.
It's literally right over now. So, right over now. Maybe just the way that it's facing. Okay. Yeah.
I don't think that's important. No, I think that will be done later, privately. It won't be part of this. Me too.
Correct, correct. Please hold on for a second.
So,
Please.
yeah, that's, I don't think
Yes, please hold on. Yeah. My connectivity is bad, so it doesn't know, so I can't take them yet.
2026 and for other purposes.
Mr. President, we are 37 days into an entirely avoidable government shutdown. And I say avoidable, Mr. President, because it was. Democrats instigated this shutdown by rejecting a clean, nonpartisan funding resolution. Republicans weren't asking them to swallow a bunch of new conservative policies. There isn't a single partisan policy in the bill. And yet Democrats couldn't bring themselves to take yes for an answer. Democrats, of course, have claimed their decision to shut down the government's about health care. They want Republicans to bail out their Obamacare mess. And as I've said probably 1,000 times now, Mr. President, Republicans are 100% willing to sit down and talk about the mess that Democrats have created. We're just not going to have that conversation while Democrats are holding the federal government hostage. That was our position in September. That was our position in October. And yes, it's still our position in November. We're just waiting for Democrats to take yes for an answer. Mr. President, I do know that Democrats have been under a lot of pressure from the far left. The far left pushed them to shut down the government. And the far left has pushed them to keep it shut down. As one House Democrat told Axios yesterday, and I quote, "There would be hell to pay if Senate Democrats don't let events play out," end quote. There would be hell to pay if Senate Democrats don't let events play out. That quote from a House Democrat just yesterday. Well, Mr. President, what events need to play out? What more needs to happen for the far left to be satisfied? The pain this shutdown has caused is only getting worse. 40 million Americans who rely on food assistance programs are now at risk of going hungry without a resolution to the shutdown. I'm sure these Americans are doing everything in their power to feed their families, but they can't do that forever. Federal workers have now gone without pay for more than a month, including the people in this building. Will the far left not be satisfied until federal workers and military families are getting their Thanksgiving dinner from a food bank? Because that's where we're headed. And then, Mr. President, there's air travel. Yesterday, the Transportation Secretary announced that as a matter of safety, the Department of Transportation is requiring mandatory reduction in air traffic starting tomorrow because of shutdown staffing issues. That means widespread flight cancellations, supply chain issues, hundreds of thousands of passengers dealing with disruptions to travel every day. The impact this will have will be immense. And all of it because Democrats cannot bring themselves to accept a clean, nonpartisan funding resolution, something that happened 13 times when they had the majority and President Biden was in the White House. So I ask the question again, Mr. President, what more do Democrats need? They got their chairs at the left-wing No Kings rally. They kept their base satisfied through the fall campaigns and election day. And as of Tuesday, they have the extremely dubious honor of instigating the longest and most severe government shutdown in history. How much more do Americans have to endure before Democrats are satisfied? Mr. President, the Democrat leader said yesterday that every day gets better for Democrats. The number 2 Democrat in the House has said that the American people's suffering takes a back seat to Democrats' precious leverage. And the senior senator from Vermont, a leading voice on the left, wrote an op-ed over the weekend calling for Democrats to keep the government shut down forever, as far as I can tell. Mr. President, I hope that's not where most Democrats are. I hope at least a few Democrats can see that this can't go on any longer. People are suffering, and it's getting worse every day. A furloughed federal employee, a mother of 5 in Maryland, told the New York Times last week, and I quote, "I don't know how to get the mortgage paid," end quote. Federal workers are taking on second jobs to make ends meet. Food banks across the country are overwhelmed. And American families are looking to the holiday season with apprehension. Mr. President, Democrats have a choice to make. Are they going to continue to bow to pressure from voices on the far left telling them to keep up their opposition? Or are they going to stop the American people's suffering and end this shutdown? I hope enough of them are willing to do the right thing. And I hope they do it soon. The American people can't wait for events to play out. Mr. President, I yield the floor, and I suggest the absence of a quorum.
Clerk, call the roll.
Ms. Osterbrooks.
I don't think that's a no. I think that will be done later, privately. It won't be part of this. Me too.
Correct. Please hold out for a second.
So,
Please.
yeah, that's, I don't think I'm not going to squeeze that into this one. That would be something. Okay. All right.
Majority Whip.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, today is day 37 of the Schumer shutdown. Senate Democrats have now broken the record for the longest shutdown in American history. Democrats have already acknowledged the government must reopen. They've said it. When Face the Nation this past Sunday, Senator Mark Warner of Virginia, referring to the shutdown, said, "I hope it ends this week." Well, it's already Thursday, Mr. President. And now there are reports that 10 to 12 Senate Democrats are actually coming forward and saying that they're going to be willing to vote for a clean, bipartisan, continuing resolution, something that's been sitting out there for 37 days. Looks like more Democrats are getting ready to finally do the right thing for the American people and reopen the government. My question to the Democrats is, why do you continue to prolong the pain? How much longer are you going to force families to stand in line at food banks? How much longer are you going to force workers to miss paychecks? The Schumer shutdown can end today. Republicans continue to work in good faith to reopen the government. We continue to talk to senators about ways to get the government open. The only question is when. Remember, it's the Democrats who are keeping the government closed. Mr. President, on a separate matter, I come to the floor today to remember Vice President Dick Cheney. Tributes are pouring in from Wyoming, from across the nation, and from around the world. Dick Cheney's career was extraordinary. He rose from modest beginnings to serve this nation in 4 different presidential administrations. He was the youngest White House Chief of Staff in American history. He represented Wyoming for 10 years in the House of Representatives. He served as Secretary of State for this nation at a moment of dramatic global change. He was, by any measure, one of the most consequential vice presidents our nation ever had. Dick helped guide the course of history in Wyoming, in America, and around the world. We're always going to remember Dick Cheney as a son of Wyoming. He was a political giant in my home state. He was plain-spoken, he was direct, and he was steady in purpose. Senator Al Simpson once said that Dick was big-time, make-things-work kind of a guy, and that's exactly right. Dick grew up in Casper, Wyoming. He was a football star at Natrona County High School, and the field there, the high school field, still bears his name. He worked as a power line man in Rock Springs, Wyoming, earning $3 an hour. He got his start in politics in the 1960s as an intern in the Wyoming State Senate. He went on to Washington. He served President Gerald Ford as the White House Chief of Staff, still, as I say, the youngest person in history to hold that position. When Art Laffer sketched out the legendary Laffer curve on a cocktail napkin, talking about economics, it was Dick Cheney's napkin. Dick was at the center of our nation's history in so many ways. After the Ford administration, Dick came home to Casper. He ran for Congress, and he won that seat 6 times in a row. In Congress, he fought for lower taxes, he fought for Second Amendment rights, and for preserving our state's natural beauty. Dick rose to become the whip of the Republican Party in the House of Representatives. That made him the second Republican whip in Congress from Wyoming. Senator Al Simpson was chosen to be the Senate Republican whip just a few years earlier. When George Herbert Walker Bush became president, he chose Congressman Dick Cheney to serve as his Secretary of Defense. The Senate confirmed him unanimously, 92-0. Don't see anything like that happening around this place today, Mr. President. In 4 transformative years, he oversaw a victory in Desert Storm. He guided America through peaceful end to the Cold War. He helped shape America's role as the world's only superpower. A decade later, he became Vice President of the United States. He liked to joke that he personally delivered Wyoming's 3 electoral votes in an election decided by 1 vote in the Electoral College. Those 3 votes from Wyoming mattered. After the 9/11 terrorist attacks, Dick's calm, steady leadership reassured Americans in one of our darkest hours. Dick's values were the values of Wyoming, enshrined in the Cowboy Code. Live each day with courage, take pride in your work, and do what needs to be done. That was Dick Cheney, and that is how he lived. Some of our founders questioned whether America ever needed a vice president. Benjamin Franklin joked that the title of the vice president, he said, would be Your Superfluous Excellency. Had Franklin met Dick Cheney, he would have changed his mind. Vice President Cheney was anything but superfluous. He shaped history. He steadied nations. He stood for a stronger, safer America and a freer world. As Vice President, Dick held the title of President of the Senate. In that capacity, he presided, as you're presiding today, Mr. President, over our chamber. His 8 tie-breaking votes in the floor of the Senate were cast at decisive moments in our history. In 2001, he cast the tie-breaking vote on the budget resolution that paved the way for generational tax relief for American families. Dick never treated this office as ceremonial. He was hands-on and deeply engaged in governing. A bust of Vice President Cheney now rests in the Senate wing of the Capitol. It marks not only the office he held, it memorializes the values that he lived. A son of Wyoming, a defender of freedom, an American original. We remember Dick Cheney as he lived, steady in purpose, firm in conviction, loyal to his country, and unafraid to do what he believed was right. My prayers are with Lynn, with with their grandchildren as they celebrate the life of an incredible man. May he rest in peace. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
I don't think that's appropriate. You know, I think that will be done later, privately. It won't be part of this. Me too.
Correct, correct. Please hold off for a second. Please.
Yeah, that's, I don't think, I'm not going to squeeze that into this one. That would be separate. Okay. All right.
Mr. President,
Senator from Florida.
today is day 37 of the longest ever government shutdown. And American families and American workers are paying the price for Democrats to put on a show. From poetry being read at night, to protests, to press conferences, it's a high price to pay. And that means our troop, federal law enforcement officers, air traffic controllers, other essential personnel, families in need that go paycheck to paycheck aren't getting a paycheck. For 6 weeks, Americans, many of whom our lives depend on, have wondered how they're going to pay their bills or keep food on the table for their families. It's ridiculous that because of this ongoing lapse in funding, heroes who protect and defend us are suffering. In fact, I found it incredible and embarrassing that the U.S. Army has published guidance on the IRS website, on their website, directing soldiers in Germany to emergency service benefits, loans, food banks, and food sharing organizations where volunteers provide leftover food through public fridges. These are our soldiers working day in and day out, far away from home, away from their loved ones. Indeed, the oldest boy in our family serves in the Army. And he said he's not worried about himself, but he's worried about his friends that have kids and wonder if they're going to get paid. We have federal law enforcement officers working tirelessly to get deadly drugs out of our communities and take down dangerous gangs like Tren de Aragua, doing it for free, without being paid. Because my colleagues are using the American people as political leverage. My Democratic colleagues have voted 14 times to keep our government closed, all while collecting their paychecks. Let me say that again. Our troops, our law enforcement officers, so many essential government employees are still working without pay because the Democrats will not vote to open this government, and my Democratic colleagues are still getting their paychecks. And it's far past time to end this. Maybe if my Democratic colleagues weren't getting paid, or maybe if we posted on the Senate website that they could go to food banks and food sharing organizations and public institutions to get food, they might think twice about voting no on reopening this government. Voting no 14 times just to continue the funding that we spent last year. I've committed to donating my own paycheck during this shutdown to a crisis center back in Florida. And I'm glad to know there are others that have committed to donating their pay during this time to help others. The American people did not send us here to let the government shut down and stop working. And our colleagues that are forcing this upon the American people and on our workers do so against the will of the people, against those that put them in office, against the wishes of even workers' groups that have historically supported Democratic candidates. We were sent here to do important work and govern in good faith on behalf of the people. Americans should be furious at the display of recklessness with their country. I understand the president's frustration. I understand our leaders' frustration. I am livid. I've been here 10 months. It is no wonder people across America hate DC. We have much work to do to make this country stronger and safer. So I urge my colleagues to end this shutdown. Stay here until we get it done. Stay here until we pass the clean continuing resolution so we can continue the people's work. And while we're at it, let's pass legislation to make sure this cannot happen again. We could start with the No Budget, No Pay Act, meaning none of us here in Congress get paid unless we pass a budget and fund the government. That's common sense. Senators and representatives shouldn't be paid until Congress does its base level job. We should also pass legislation to make sure that those in Congress don't leave DC until we deliver and we keep government functioning. That's why I'm co-sponsoring the Eliminate Shutdowns Act and other legislation that would make sure this does not happen again and ensures that our government remains open. And those heroes that put their lives on the line for us get paid. We owe it to the American people to ensure the government remains open, and we should not have another shutdown period. 37 days of chaos, uncertainty, and dysfunction is a disservice to the Americans we are here to represent, and this must end. Government must work for the people. If showboating politicians begin sabotaging the very operation of our government, corrupting rules, warping those rules' intended use to satisfy a subversive agenda, all options need to be on the table. Those options can take many forms, but this cannot continue. And maybe I should put this in terms that even my Democratic colleagues can understand. Maybe the Senate needs to reimagine the filibuster. Let's make Congress work again. And until we can do that, maybe we need to lock Congress in the Capitol until that happens. No bail, no revolving Capitol door. Let's get it done, Mr. President. I yield back.
I don't think that's important. I think that will be done later, privately. It won't be part of this. Me too.
Correct. Please hold off for a second.
So, yeah, that's, I don't think I'm not going to squeeze that into this one. That would be separate. Okay. All right.
Well, good morning, everyone. Joining us this morning for the latest updates, we have some members of the Republican Governance Group, one of our most active caucuses in the Republican side. These are folks among our friends and colleagues, the most productive, most dedicated, most effective members because they are people who work every day on solutions for the greatest challenges facing our country. And Carlos Jimenez is with us, and Blake Moore, and Julie Fedorchik, and Gabe Evans. Beth Van Dyne may be joining us. I think she had a flight delay. But they've been out in their districts working very hard to help their constituents navigate through the chaos that's been created by the Democrat shutdown. And if you're keeping count, this is day 37. 37. It seems unbelievable to us that we've gone this long. It is officially and shamefully the longest shutdown in U.S. history. Republicans feel very helpless about the situation because, as we've noted, there is really nothing for us to negotiate. We sent them a clean CR, as you know, back in September 19th. We passed it out of the House. It feels like a lifetime ago, but that was a nonpartisan measure. It was 24 pages in length. It has no Republican priorities on it at all. It was merely the status quo to keep the lights on so that the members of Congress and the Republican and Democrat Party could work together to finish the government funding appropriations process. And the Democrats tried to turn that into a game. Now, we're going to give you the latest updates on that and where we think this is headed. But I just first want to address in a bit more detail the current state of our politics. It has been very interesting to us to see all the pundits trying to spin the results of the election on Tuesday. I just want to point out some simple facts here, and as usual, I try to be concise and give you the highlights here. But there's some things that we really need to point out. First, there were no surprises on Tuesday night, okay? You had blue states and blue cities that voted blue, to the alarm of no one, to the surprise of no one. That was what was expected. It just so happened that New York and New Jersey and Virginia were the states that were in the national spotlight on Tuesday. If the tables had been turned and if the calendar had been different and you had 3 red states, we'd have an entirely different narrative that you all would be writing about. Don't lose the simple facts. Second, the big headline that everyone is writing about appropriately is that the future of the Democrats was set in New York City. A 34-year-old Marxist is now the leader of the Democratic Party, and it is a very dangerous road for them to go down. I want to say this because a lot's been said about the Mamdani campaign. It is very easy to run and win as a socialist, right? All you do is promise everything to everyone for free. What a great message that is. Boy, that really resonates for people who don't study history. And while you're making all those promises, you hope that they never realize the trap that you're actually setting, the impossibility of fulfilling your fantastical claims and dreams, and the extreme danger and chaos that would result if you ever could. When you run as a socialist, you have to hope that they never understand that this will lead to the inevitable loss of their freedom, their opportunity, and their security, the loss of meritocracy and fairness in society, the loss of colorblindness, and the loss of emphasis on character, and the morality and the personal incentive and the common sense that we rely upon to keep a republic in operation. If you run as a socialist, you run on a big list of false claims, and you promise everything to everyone and you can't deliver, and if you were ever able to deliver, it will be to the great detriment of the very people that you lured in to vote for you. Third fact about the election on Tuesday night is that the Democrats, and you all are not writing about this, and you should be, not writing enough about it, the Democrats have now set themselves on a collision course in their own tent. If you look at Spanberger in Virginia and Sherrill in New Jersey, they tried to run as moderate pragmatists. That's how they self-described. But they will be no match for the coming communist wave taking over their party right now. The energy is on the side of the Marxists. Look no further than the top 2 Democrats here in Congress. We've noted this here every day. They had to bend the knee to the socialists. Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer are both from New York. The top Democrat leader in the House and the top Democrat leader in the Senate, they couldn't get around that. And so Hakeem had to ultimately embrace it. He had to give the full blessing to Mamdani and his agenda. And he co-owns it. And Chuck Schumer flirted with it. He pandered all along. He flirted with that open endorsement till the better end, even though Mamdani is an activist against Israel and an anti-Semite. And Chuck Schumer is the highest-ranked Jewish official in America, and he couldn't bring himself to disclaim that. And as we've noted here every day, the sole reason for the entire federal government being shut down now, the sole reason for all the American people suffering all this pain and hardship is because of the fear of political retribution from the far-left activists who run the Democrat Party. That is the motivation for the shutdown. It's never been about any policy issue at all. It was only so that they could show a fight and try to show that they're tough to this rising far-left activist base in the party. The old guard has been repudiated, and the radicals are taking over the Democratic Party. We have evidence now every day. Yesterday, Jared Golden announced he would not be running for re-election in the state of Maine. He's a moderate, and he has no place in his party anymore. And then this morning, you saw the headline. Former Speaker Nancy Pelosi has now announced her retirement this morning. That is a very important sign that I hope that you all will delve into. Even the famous San Francisco liberal is not far left enough for the neo-Marxists. We commend her for her services. We all do, everyone who serves in Congress, but there should be a lot written about that. Fourth point I just want to make in the aftermath of Tuesday is that off-year election results in isolated places are never indicative of the upcoming midterm election. Don't read too much into that. You shouldn't. If you do, you're going to miss it. The GOP is in excellent position to win big next year. And when I say I'm bullish about the midterms, we absolutely are, and there's a lot of reasons for that. This is not groundless optimism. It's based on facts. The reason we're in such a great position is because we are united. And while the Democrats engage in their emerging civil war, Republicans are going to continue to work and deliver for all the new voters that we brought into the party last fall in 2024. There was a true demographic shift in that election, as you know. Record number of Hispanic and Latino voters, Black and African American voters, Jewish voters, union workers, urban voters, young people. And while they say that there's this big swell of enthusiasm of young people based on what happened in New York City Tuesday night, I would give to you Exhibit A on our side. Maybe you're not noticing, but the Turning Point events at college campuses all around the country are setting records for attendance. You have hundreds of thousands of new young people weekly coming into the movement that are enthusiastic, young conservatives who are looking for truth, who believe in America's founding principles, and who want to be engaged, and they will be engaged in next year's midterms. The third reason is we got a very favorable map. You shouldn't miss this either. I was very bullish even before the current redistricting battles began. As we sit here today, there are 13 House Democrats sitting in districts that President Trump won. There's another 21 of them in districts he came within 5 points of winning. There's only three, conversely, there's only 3 House Republicans sitting in districts that Kamala Harris won. That's a lopsided map. And after redistricting, we think we'll net a few more seats, handful, maybe 6 to 8. We're in very good position to make history and grow this majority. And finally, I'll just leave you with this. The reason we're so enthusiastic about running next year is we have a real record to run on. Mondami and Democrats want to talk about affordability. We love that subject. We love it. Look at the facts. I brought some this morning. It's the Republicans who are working every day to make life more affordable for working families. And it's not a talking point for us. We are delivering. After 4 long years of skyrocketing prices under the Biden administration, we had to take over. You don't flip a switch and reverse that overnight. It takes a while to work those policies out of the system and to get the new ones in. President Trump and Republicans are delivering results for the American people that they can see and feel. To date, we've seen core inflation is nearing its lowest level in 4 years. Gas prices have fallen to a 4-year low. Prices for everyday goods continue to decline, and blue-collar workers are seeing the largest increase in wage growth in nearly 6 decades. That's the result of our policies. In Congress, House Republicans are working hand in hand with President Trump to advance his affordability agenda. It is President Trump who ran on that. It's President Trump who's delivering on that. And we are all partners in that new effort to make America great again. It begins with the economy, and we know that. We're laser focused on making a difference in the lives of hardworking American families. Here's another demonstration, the Working Families Tax Cut. It is aptly named. It's the largest tax cut in U.S. history for working and middle-class Americans. You got Bernie Sanders running around. They're talking about the billionaires. It's not this. That's the opposite of the truth. Look at the facts. That bill was written for lower and middle-class earners, and they are the ones that will feel the positive effects going into next year. We included in that, as you know, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, real tax relief for seniors. These are the kinds of things that people feel, and they see that we're making good on our promises. We've made historic investments in American energy dominance to drive down the cost of gasoline and groceries. And we're grounding every decision we make in common sense. That's what we restored. That's what we ran on. That's what we're delivering. A return to common sense, not the woke progressive nonsense that they delivered for 4 years, not the spending like drunken sailors that drove cost up for everything with inflation. We're restoring common sense, fiscal responsibility. We're good stewards of taxpayer dollars, and we're refusing to cave right now today to the Democrats' wild demand to spend $1.5 trillion in new spending. That is taxpayer dollars, that's your money, that they want to spend to reopen the government. That's their counterproposal. That's why we're not having a negotiation with them. It's ridiculous. Included in the $1.5 trillion that they want to spend is $200 billion, almost $200 billion to restore health care benefits to illegal aliens. That is taxpayer money that they want to spend for that. They want to send billions of dollars back overseas for social programs in foreign countries. We're not doing that. They want to give $500 million back to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting to prop up left-leaning news organizations. We're not doing that. And by the way, in the middle of all this, they want to cut $50 billion from the Rural Hospital Fund. They can't tell you they care about health care since they put that in their proposal. We're grounding every decision in common sense, and Democrats had their chance. When they controlled Washington, look at the history, don't forget it. This was just a year ago. You know what we inherited? They left us with a 40-year high inflation, higher taxes and energy prices, and massive instability around the world. And what did they do in June of this year? This is the most recent history no one can forget. They voted against no tax on tips. They voted against no taxes on Social Security. They voted against a larger child tax credit. The Democrats in the House and Senate voted against lower energy prices, against more American manufacturing and jobs, and against lowering health care premiums by 12%. That provision, the cost sharing reduction provision, was in the House version of the Working Families Tax Cut, the big beautiful bill. We sent it over to the Senate, and they worked to strike it out of the bill. Ask the Senate Democrats about that. Right now, they've created another mess. They've created a mess for America with this pointless government shutdown. The Democrats will tell you that they're feeling emboldened. They're feeling emboldened because they had a few blue state election results. It does not change the fact that they have walked their party off a cliff with no parachute and no path forward. The reason we're stuck right now is because of one simple fact. If they vote to reopen the government, the Senate Democrats are afraid that the radicals in their party will say that they caved. They're afraid of the retribution that will come from that. But if they keep the government shut down, they know very well, as we all do, that millions of Americans will continue to suffer as essential services remain unfunded and paychecks to federal workers continue to stay stalled. So our question for Democrats this morning is this: which constituency matters more? The loud radicals in your party or the hardworking American people? I can tell you which side the Republicans are on. 15 times we voted for the hardworking American people. And 15 times so far, the Democrats in Congress have voted for the radicals in their party. It is unconscionable to us that they've allowed it to go on this long. And at some point, all you can do is pray that common sense prevails. And that's what I've been doing a lot of. We hope and pray that there are still Democrats out there. There's just a handful. We need 5 more votes. 5 centrist, common sense Democrats in the Senate to come to those senses and do the right thing. It's time for them to put their country first. I'm delighted to introduce the next speaker, and he's a congressman from Miami. He's a former mayor of the county down there, and he has been in charge. He served as a police officer, but he was the chief of the fire department down there. I mean, the guy's resume is longer than almost anybody in Congress, and as a son of a firefighter, I always take personal delight in reminding everybody he's the only career firefighter paramedic in Congress. He's doing a great job, and he serves as vice chairman of the Republican Governance Group, one of our largest and most active caucuses I mentioned, and we're truly grateful to have him here to discuss some of these consequences of the government shutdown. Glad to have you. Carlos, come on up.
Thank you.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And if you indulge me, I think you brought me up here to talk about the shutdown, but I will stray a little bit. I'm the only Cuban-born member of Congress. That means I was born in Cuba. I was not born here in the United States. I didn't speak a word of English until I got here. I was 7 years old. And the reason I'm here is that my parents brought me here seeking freedom freedom from communism, freedom from a Marxist regime. And so I can tell you that I know a communist and a Marxist when I see one. They may call themselves socialists, they may call themselves a democratic socialist, but make no mistake, Mondami in New York, he's a Marxist. And the thing that bothers me is he's very proud to say, well, I'm young, I'm this, I'm that, I'm Muslim. I understand you can be proud of that. But then, if you're so proud, don't call yourself a democratic socialist. You are a Marxist. Go ahead. Tell people exactly who you are. He couldn't, and he can't because he knew he wouldn't get elected. But I hope that the people of New York do not suffer the same consequences that my homeland of Cuba has suffered. Castro and the Castro regime destroyed my homeland. They can't even keep the lights on. They don't have food, they don't have medicine, they can't keep the lights on. It's a total disaster of an island, a beautiful island that actually had the second highest standard of living in the Western Hemisphere when the regime took over. And so one of the reasons I'm in Congress, the primary reason I'm in Congress, is that I want to make sure that my children and grandchildren never suffer the same fate that my parents did, having to leave their country and bring us to a new country with about $10 in their pocket. Now, that's what makes this country great. My parents came here with $10 in their pocket and a watch. By the way, I still have that watch. All right. And here I am. Their son was a firefighter. He was a city manager, he was a county commissioner, county mayor of the largest county in the state of Florida, and now a member of Congress. I don't think there's too many countries that you can say that can happen. That's why I love this country. That's why I will fight for this country. And again, I know a Marxist when I see one. And it's unfortunate that the Democrat Party is heading that way, which means we just have to fight that much harder. Here to talk about the shutdown, and so I'm Congressman Carlos Jimenez again. I represent the state of Florida, Miami, and the Keys. Today I'm standing in for my friend, RG2 Chairman David Valadao of California, with one clear message, and I want to thank also the other members of RG2 that are here. The Republican Governance Group focus has always been about governing responsibly. RG2 is committed to putting results ahead of rhetoric, keeping the government functioning, and finding practical, common sense solutions that improve the lives of the American people. That's what we're here to do. And that means that we do what's right, even when it's hard. Yes, we're here on day 37 of the Democrat government shutdown, and with each passing day, more Americans are feeling the impact. The effects in my hometown or in my state. In my home state of Florida, 155,000 federal employees have not received their paychecks. Close to 2 million Floridians who rely on SNAP, including more than 1 million children, will not be getting their benefits. My colleagues on the other side insist we have chosen, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle have chosen politics over food security for millions of Americans. Small business loans are being delayed, totaling nearly $300 million in missed distributions, costing our state a estimated $1.7 billion in economic benefit alone. Starting Friday, 10% of the American airspace is going to be reduced because of the shutdowns ahead of the busy holiday season. More than 3,500 flights will either be delayed or canceled altogether. That's true effect of this shutdown. Let me be clear, holding the government hostage is not a responsible way to negotiate policy. On September 19th, the House of Representatives voted to extend government funding to keep the government open. And as the Speaker said, with a clean CR. There were no riders in it. There's no policy differences. It's actually a Biden budget, right? And so, what is the problem? No, there is no problem. It's politics. That's the problem. Meanwhile, Senate Democrats have voted 14, now you say 15 times to keep the government closed. The funding bill before the Senate is the same short-term continuing resolution that we passed 15 times under President Biden with bipartisan support. And I supported each and every one of them to keep the government open. And I know that most, if not all, the members of RG2 also voted for the CRs to keep the government funded. We can and should debate serious issues like healthcare costs, but not at the expense of hardworking American families. I urge my Senate Democrat colleagues to pass the continuing resolution so that we can reopen the government and return to the table to negotiate real solutions. History shows that when Congress works together, we can find solutions without inflicting pain on the American people. I urge Senate Democrats again to reopen the government, end the suffering, and then join us in crafting meaningful bipartisan policy meant to improve the lives of everyday Americans. That's how we govern responsibly, and that's how we serve the American people. And I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity. And I guess now I want to turn the dais over to our Majority Leader, Steve Scalise.
Well, thank you, Carlos. And what an honor it is to follow my dear friend Carlos Gimenez, who really is the epitome of the American dream. You know, when you hear stories like his, sad stories, the root of it, having to flee your home country because Cuba fell to Marxism, to communism. But luckily, for people like Carlos, all around the world, there's one place that they can look to if they want a North Star. If they still believe in freedom, they yearn for that desire, and then it fails in their home country, they can look to the United States, because the United States represents freedom all around the world. And how dangerous of a position that is when Marxists from within try to change it here, try to unravel what makes America so great. And as Carlos came to seek that freedom that millions others have as well, like my great-grandparents who came from Italy to seek that same freedom. Ronald Reagan said it best: freedom is only one generation away from extinction if we don't fight to defend it. Those words of Reagan still ring true today because, Carlos, we will continue to fight for freedom. But it's not an empty fight. There are people on the other side here in America that are pushing back, that want to destroy that capitalist free market system. And so when you look at the results of the election, anybody that wants to go celebrate a blue state voting blue, what they're not acknowledging is what happened in a city like New York. It reverberates. When New York elects a Marxist as their mayor, there are other Democrats that are now looking and saying, does the Democrat Party represent me anymore? And today you heard it again. Democrats are the ones who are looking and saying that they're done with the Democrat Party. Jared Golden yesterday announced he's not going to run again. And he didn't just say he wasn't going to run again because he got tired of serving in Congress. I think it's really important to pay attention to what Jared Golden said. And he is in a swing district. Jared Golden is one of those moderate Democrats who represents maybe the old Democrat Party now, what was discarded by the voters on Democrat cities and states. But it's not where America is. So when Jared Golden announced yesterday he's not going to run again, he said, quote, "We're allowing the most extreme pugilistic elements of our party to call the shots. Just look again at the shutdown. For as long as I can remember, we have opposed shutting down the government over policy disputes. We criticized Republicans for taking hostages this way." That was Jared Golden explaining why he's done with being a Democrat in Congress. And when the Democrat Party no longer stands for common sense, for members that do on occasion reach across the aisle, they're going to be relegated to a scrap heap of history, because America is not a socialist nation. While the Democrat Party has turned their leadership structure over to a socialist, that's not where America is. And if they're running people like Jared Golden out of their party, they can go celebrate the results of last night's election. Again, if Alabama held an election also Tuesday, and gee whiz, a Republican governor was elected governor of Alabama, would anybody be writing a story about it? Of course not. So let them go celebrate New Jersey electing a Democrat governor, New York City electing a Democrat. The real concern is that the Cuomo wing of the Democrat Party got destroyed by the Mondami wing of the Democrat Party. And if they want to call that a victory, good luck. Something tells me they're not going to be sending Mondami to swing districts around America. He's not going to Maine. Let Mondami go to Maine for that now open seat in Congress, a 50-50 district. Will they be sending Mondami to those kind of swing districts? Colorado, where somebody like Gabe Evans represents, is Mondami going to be going there? Because that's where their party is now headed. And they chose that. But America is not embracing that form of socialism. We know what you get from socialism. You get the promises of free everything. But Americans know innately there's no such thing as a free lunch. All you end up with, the results, are the hollow promises and the failures that come with those promises, because you know you get what you pay for. And somebody else is going to have to pay for that free thing. And a lot of those rich people they love denouncing are leaving. Many have already left. So even when they go raise taxes even more with the highest rates you can imagine, who's going to pay those higher rates? It's not going to be the millionaires and billionaires. Many of them have already left. It's going to be hardworking families in New York City. Good news for you, you might be making $100,000 a year. By the way, a police officer married to a school teacher makes more than that in New York City. They're going to be the quote-unquote rich who get the higher taxes and the free buses and the grocery stores that are run by the government with empty shelves and expired food. That's what they're going to get. But the rest of America is not going to have it. So while Democrats keep the government shut down, and they brag about it, I mean, you heard Senator Murphy yesterday, quote, "I think we're in an enormously strong position right now." Strong position? What's so strong about taking food out of the mouths of 42 American families? What is strong about that, Senator? Sure, you can vote again today to keep the government shut down, but there's nothing strong about denying food to people who are low income and who can't afford it. That's a weak place to be. But that's what they're bragging about. When, as we saw, the transportation secretary yesterday said 10% of flights are going to have to be cut back because we don't have enough air traffic controllers because Democrats chose not to pay them. And so people are getting ready to go travel to see their family, hopefully, for Thanksgiving. But they're not going to be able to get that flight. They're going to have to leave a day or two earlier to drive. Maybe they won't be able to fly. But don't worry, some Democrat senator thinks he's in a stronger position because he's now leveraged Americans as pawns in some game. That's what they think this is. It's disgusting. And the American people are catching on. And so while Democrats applaud socialism being the new wave of their party, the few common sense Democrats left in their party are leaving, running for the exits. Well, you might be able to leave New York City and go to Florida or Texas or somewhere else, but if they destroy America, there's nowhere else to go. That's why we're going to fight for freedom every single day, and their approach to Marxism, socialism, whatever you want to call it, will not prevail in America. Our whip, Tom Emmer.
It's day 37 of the Democrat government shutdown, and one thing has become clearer, more clear now than ever. The Democrat Party of today is not your grandparents' Democrat Party. They refuse to govern. They resort to hostage-taking when they don't get their way. They routinely put politics before people. And now they have made communists and assassination fantasizers the pillars of their party. Democrats claim they want to make life more affordable for hardworking Americans, but every time that they've had the majorities in Congress and a Democrat president in the White House, they've done the exact opposite. Take the American Rescue Plan under Joe Biden, for example, which was later deemed by economic experts as the, quote, original sin that led to double-digit inflation. Or look at the Affordable Care Act, which is so unaffordable, they have to pay people to use it. The Democrats have no moral high ground to stand on when it comes to good governance. They don't know what it is. And when they claim that they're fighting for you, do not believe them. Because if this shutdown has taught us anything, it's that the Democrats will willingly inflict pain on the American people if they think it gives them political leverage. Their kamikaze politicians and their constituents deserve better. In stark contrast, however, Republicans have done our jobs. We passed a nonpartisan government funding bill out of the House over a month ago. All we need, as the Speaker said earlier, is just 5 Democrats in the Senate to grow a spine, stand up to the radicals in their party, and join us in getting our clean CR to the president's desk. Enough is enough. It's past time for Democrats to end the political games and reopen the government for the people they were elected to serve. Our conference chair, Lisa McClain.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everybody. Again, here we are. Yesterday, Americans woke up to an unthinkable reality. And Carlos touched on it earlier. A communist was elected mayor in America's largest city. How did this happen? Ask yourself, how did this happen? It happened because a small socialist portion of this country took control of the Democrat Party. A party that is now apparently united behind a socialist agenda. And slogans always seem to start with the same word: free. Free food, free rent, free buses, right? I feel like I'm at an Oprah Winfrey show. You get a car and you get a car. Well, this isn't the Oprah Winfrey show. And like many of you, my parents taught me a really good lesson when I was young. Nothing is free. Everything comes with a cost. Absolutely nothing is free. We all learned that. Look no further than the Democrats' disastrous shutdown plan. They want to give free health care to illegals. Come to our country. We'll give you, illegally mind you, we'll give you free health care on the backs of hard-working Americans. And in demanding that, they're asking for $1.5 trillion in wasteful spending and a painful shutdown. A shutdown that has denied food assistance to 42 million American families. 42 million American families. A shutdown that has forced law enforcement to work without pay. But don't worry, I'm sure those law enforcement agents can go and get free food from their local grocery store, and somebody will pay their free rent, right? Yeah, I live in reality, not fantasy. The Democrats want to jeopardize our national security. And now, flights have been reduced by 10% at 40 of our major airports. I think air traffic, like when you get on a plane, what's next? Like your plane rides are going to be free too? I mean, why stop at food and buses? Let's just give everything free. It doesn't work like that, people. Nothing's free. Somebody is paying. And who pays? Anybody want to guess who pays? Hardworking taxpayers. American taxpayers. That's who pay. Nothing's free, right? Nothing is free. Look at your Republican leaders. Just compare and contrast. That's why we voted more than a month ago to actually fund the government. That's why we've been working in our districts to help those that are suffering. And that's why we are delivering real results that drive down gas prices and drive down mortgage rates and drive down the price of eggs. No one's reporting on the price of eggs anymore, right? Now, not for illegals, not for radicals, and not for communists who despise this country, but for the men and women who love America, like Carlos and his family who came over. And let's keep it that way. And let's make sure that we keep America strong every day. So to the Democrats, let me be clear. Republicans will still be there when your communist lawmakers aren't. And when your communist kingmakers finally give you permission to put Americans first again, Republicans will still be here. We'll still be here when your socialist experiment collapses, because it always does. And we'll still be standing shoulder to shoulder with the hardworking Americans who aren't demanding free groceries, free buses, free rent. No, we will be standing shoulder to shoulder, demanding nothing less than freedom. That is what Republicans demand, freedom. Because that's what makes this country great. Not socialism, not government control, but freedom. Thank you.
All right, questions? Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
The Supreme Court, and specifically Justice Gorsuch yesterday, seemed concerned about the Trump administration's usurping congressional authority, calling it a, quote, one-way ratchet that can't be turned back. What's your response to that? Are the justices right to be concerned that Congress isn't fulfilling its constitutional obligations?
I don't find myself in disagreement with Justice Gorsuch too often, but I think he's missed the mark on this one. First of all, I don't think you should read too much into the questioning that you heard at the Supreme Court. I mean, this is part of judicial review. It's a cherished part of that tradition. I used to be one of those litigators. I did constitutional law, oral argument, and I would have liked to have argued that case yesterday, because I think the law is clearly on the side of what the administration has done. I'll remind you that I'm a jealous guardian of Article 1. You know, the legislative branch of government in our constitutional system is the most important. It was placed first in prominence, and that's true. And while Congress has a role to play in tariffs and related trade and economic policy, the executive branch does as well. And I think the president has used that well within the bounds of what he's allowed to do, because he's addressing what was truly a crisis for the country. The trade disparity had gone on for decades. It was creating a real imbalance, and it was adversely affecting American people and consumers. Remember that he ran on this idea. He talked about tariffs on the campaign trail, and he got a popular and electoral college mandate in the election. So this is not some surprise. He's fulfilling the promise that he was elected to fulfill in a literal sense. So I think the court has to give deference to that. I think the court has to recognize the executive is doing what they're doing. He's using tariffs to create leverage in our trade strategy, and it is yielding great results for the American people. And heaven forbid if it were reversed, because it would create chaos, which is one of the questions I think Justice Barrett asked, my old friend from Louisiana. I mean, that was an important question, because it would set back all of the strategy and the trade agreements and a lot of the things that have been accomplished for the people. So in summary, I would say, don't read too much into the questions. This is how the process works. I'm sure the court will look at this very carefully and deliberately, as they do, and I expect that we'll have a majority of the court that says that this administration is doing what they have the legal authority to do. If I felt like the executive branch had overstepped its bounds on trade or on the tariffs or something, I would have stepped in. I mean, that's my job as the Speaker of the House over the legislative branch. I would have done it in my own way, to be candid. I would have gone to the president privately and said, hey, sir, enough. I think you're overstepped the bounds. Let's try to figure that out. I wouldn't have publicly had a big spat with him, because it wouldn't have been necessary. But that conversation didn't happen, because I believe that what he's done is well within the bounds. And so we'll see what the court does. Yes, sir.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. Leader Thune has said on a number of occasions that in exchange for reopening the government, he will promise Democrats a vote on ACA subsidies by a date certain. Will you do the same in the House?
He promised it a long time ago, and he was rebuffed. I mean, that's not what this is about. I mean, they've demonstrated over and over and over. Somebody said this is the Seinfeld shutdown. It's about nothing. If you brought in 100 Senate and House Democrats right now and said, what is it about? They wouldn't even give you the same answer. They don't even know. They filed a counter proposal that's $1.5 trillion in new spending with all the crazy abuses that I listed earlier today. That's still sitting out there. That's the counter proposal. Then they tried to say it was about health care. That was never the issue for the September 30th fiscal cliff. That was always a December issue. We always knew, everybody in the building knew, we were going to have to wrestle through that and come to a consensus on a solution on the COVID-era Obamacare subsidies in October, November, December. And ironically, they're eating up all the clock where that would have been done. It's not about any of this. It's about politics, as we explained earlier. They are more afraid of the radical activists who are running the Democratic Party right now than they are of starving families, having families go hungry and having federal workers go without paychecks. That's just a simple fact. So yes, Leader Thune has been over backwards. He's offered them a vote. You know what they told him in response? No, we need you to guarantee the outcome of that vote. Well, that's ridiculous. That can't be done.
The House is funded from the Senate. Will you assure the House members that they'll get a vote, House Democrats, that they'll get a vote on ACA subsidies by a date certain?
No, because we did our job, and I'm not part of the negotiation. The House did its job on September 19th. I'm not promising anybody anything. I'm going to let this process play out. I'll tell you what they wanted. I'll tell you what Schumer and Jeffries wanted. In fact, Chuck Schumer said it publicly and decried that Thune and I would not go in a back room with them and make a four corners agreement on Obamacare subsidies. And I said, there's no way. It was never possible or appropriate for that to be handled on a CR, on a short-term stopgap funding measure. And he knows that. And we're not doing that anymore.
$200%, 300%, 500%, 700%, a little bit more than that. So today I'm thrilled to announce that the two world's largest pharmaceutical manufacturers, Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk, have agreed to offer their most popular GLP-1 weight loss drug. I call it the fat drug, remember? At drastic discounts. They're very effective drugs. So far, I've never heard anything bad about them. I only hear good about them. It's pretty. Is there anything bad about them, Bob? Yeah, I haven't heard anything bad. Someday, maybe it'll come out, which will notify you immediately. But so far, I haven't heard that, including the drugs known as Zepbound and Wegovy, often called Ozempic. This is a triumph for American patients that will save lives and improve the health of millions and millions of Americans. Amazing thing. They are amazing. I want to thank Eli Lilly CEO David Ricks, a friend of mine. We've worked long and hard. He and I got this whole thing started in a way. And Novo Nordisk CEO Mike Dustar for joining us today. Great, talented people. They make a lot of money. I looked at the money, but they're entitled to the money because the companies are doing very well. Along with Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Secretary Howard Lutnick. Do you take any of this stuff, Howard?
Not yet.
Okay, good. CMS Administrator Mehmet Oz, he doesn't take it. Food and Drug Administrator Commissioner Marty McCary, and Director of Medicare Chris Plump. And we have Steve, where's Steve? Is he here? Head of Public Relations for the White House. He's taking it. The United States is just 4% of the world's population and consumes only 13% of all prescription drugs, yet pharmaceutical companies make 75% of their profits from the American customer. I would say that's not so good, right? It's not exactly great. To address this chronic unfairness, I signed an executive order earlier this year instructing my administration to do everything in our power to implement most favored nations drug pricing, something that has been helped greatly by tariffs, because when nations refuse to do it, we should have put this in the case yesterday. I just say, well, if you're not going to do it, we're going to charge you a like amount of tariffs, and they immediately say, we'll do it, which means that Americans should pay no more than the lowest price offered anywhere in the world. So that you've heard for years the disparity where you'll pay $150 for a pill in New York and you'll pay $10 for a pill in London. Now you're going to pay $20 both, because the world is a little bit bigger than the U.S., so it goes up that way, but you'll pay $20 and $20. A tremendous advantage to our country after years of being abused by the world system. Already Pfizer, AstraZeneca, and EMD, Serono, have agreed to drastically lower their prices for American patients, and today Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk are joining the phenomenal list of the most exciting announcements. I mean, nobody's ever had announcements like, and this has to do with other pharmaceutical products also. But we're covering this today because it's such a big seller. I guess it's the #1 selling thing there is today. These are two companies that are behind the groundbreaking weight loss drugs that have helped millions of Americans struggling with obesity live better, longer lives, everything else. These are the two companies that really broke ground. Until now, neither of these two popular drugs have been covered by Medicare for weight loss, and they've only rarely been covered by Medicaid. They've often cost consumers more than $1,000 per month, and some a lot more than that. Americans have been spending as much as 520% more for Zepbound and 1,400% more for Wegovy than patients in Europe. Think of that. 1,400% more than a patient in Europe for the exact same box. And that ends starting today. The other countries are not happy with us. Now, I don't think they like me too much, Bobby, but that's okay. Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk are committing to offer Zepbound and Wegovy at most favored nations rates for American patients. This will slash the cost of Wegovy from $1,350 a month to ultimately $250 a month. $1,350 to $250. Did I do a good job? They don't write about it. You know, they like to not write these things. And reduce, you think Biden could have done this? I don't think so. And reduce the monthly cost of Zepbound from $1,080 to $346. In addition, they're both committing that future GLP-1 weight loss drugs taken orally, which are currently under development, will be sold at no more than $149 per month. It's a massive, think of that. You go from $1,300 to $149 a month. We anticipate these new versions will be coming out in a very short period of time. All of these drugs will be available directly to the consumer at TrumpRx.gov. Trump, they want to use my name. Trump, it better be good. TrumpRx.gov, and I think it's turning out to be pretty amazing, right, us? Just as significantly, Medicare and Medicaid will finally cover the cost of these weight loss drugs for millions of patients suffering from obesity. Co-pays for Medicare patients will be as low as $50. This is tremendous savings. I mean, now you're talking about from $1,350 to $50. This is tremendous news for the American seniors, and you all remember when I had 1/8 of 1% for the year. I cut it 1/8 of, and I was so thrilled. But now we're cutting it 1,000%, 1,200%. Nobody's ever said anything like this. Nobody else could have done it, but I say that modestly. In addition, you think it was easy dealing with these people? It wasn't. You think it was easy saying your drug, Mr. Eli Lilly, that we're selling for $1,300 is going to be sold for $250. You know the amazing thing, the stocks all went up. I mean, these guys they're fantastic. Because it's going to equalize the world. The world's a bigger place, and it's going to equalize. I was a little surprised to see that, but I'm happy about it. In addition, Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk have agreed to provide all of their other medications to Medicaid at most favored nations prices. Most favored nations, meaning that you will pay the lowest price anywhere in the world. That's what you're going to pay. Whereas before they paid low prices and we paid, you know, thousands of percentile ahead more. And to sell these drugs to all consumers at deeply discounted prices via TrumpRx.com. When is TrumpRx.com opening?
The site is open. It will launch in terms of giving people prices before the end of the year.
Okay, got to make sure it's successful. It's got my name on it. I don't want to be like so many others. I don't want to be like the train they're building in California, okay, which has about 15,000% cost overrun, or the beautiful Obama building that he's building in Chicago for the museum, which is now shuttered up and dead. They got it up, and they couldn't finish. It's about, would you say, 5 years behind schedule? And about 2,000% over budget. Then he tells us how to run Medicaid. Many of the most widely used drugs will be available for 60% off, or even more than that. In addition, all new medications introduced by Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk to the American market will be sold at the heavily reduced most favored nations price. Most favored nations price, that's the best, because they have been thousands of percent lower than what we were selling in many cases. Furthermore, Eli Lilly is investing $27 billion. That's all? And Novo Nordisk will invest $10 billion. That's all? That's peanuts. In the United States to reshore and do a big domestic manufacturing job in the facilities they're going to spend. So Eli Lilly spent $27 billion. Novo is spending $10 billion in the United States. So they're building new plant and equipment. That's part of what will be $20 or $21 trillion this year. There's never been anything like it. I know nobody talks about it, but there's never been anything like, I would say, you would say, that there's never been anything like this ever, whether it's China or Europe, or you could take all of Europe, there's never been anything like this. So we're already past 17 trillion. We're going to be, I think by the time the year closes out, we'll have investments of over $21 trillion based on the way we're going. And by the way, tariffs are very important. Without tariffs, perhaps it could be a little bit different, to put it mildly. Tariffs are so important. The decision in the Supreme Court would be devastating to our country if we got a negative, devastating if we got a negative decision. But this is a great day for American health and healthcare, and for all of American patients. These are things that are miracles to have this happen. And they're, you know, we're bringing all our medicines, again, because of tariffs, we're bringing all our medicines. If you remember where during COVID, we made almost no medicine here. We had to go to China, we had to go to Ireland, we had to go to other places, UK, to get our medicine. We didn't make it here. Now we're making it, we'll soon be making it all here, again, because of tariffs. And my election, but because of tariffs much more. For years, politicians have talked about making health care affordable, but my administration is actually doing it. Americans deserve the best health care in the world, and we're now getting the best health care at the lowest price. So I'd like to ask somebody who's doing a fantastic job, Secretary Kennedy, to say a few words, followed by Dr. Oz, Dr. Klopp, and then Eli Lilly, CEO David Ricks, and Novo Nordisk CEO Mike Dustar. These are incredible stars in that business. Like Dustar is a big star. And I can tell you that David Ricks is one of the hottest people in the world in business, but the business that he's in is pharmaceutical. And the job he's done with Eli Lilly is incredible. Both of these gentlemen, they really are stars in the truest sense. And it's an honor to have you in the White House. And go to it, Bobby.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to start by thanking you, Mr. President, for declaring war on chronic disease in this country. This is something no American president has ever done. If we want to solve the chronic disease crisis, we have to tackle obesity. Obesity is the #1 driver of chronic disease. 50% of our adult population are obese or overweight, and it drives about 50% of healthcare costs in this country. Diabetes, cardiac diseases, we are going to see a decline because of this historic agreement. We're going to see a decline in costs, but also, more importantly, in the afflictions themselves. President Trump is the friend of the forgotten American. Obesity is a disease of poverty, overwhelmingly. And these drugs have only been available for people who have wealth. At one point, the majority of prescriptions, the highest concentration of prescriptions in this country, was the Upper West Side of Manhattan. And what about the people who live in rural areas, who live in food deserts? What about the people in urban areas who live in food deserts and are suffering from obesity and are locked into that system where they can only get ultra-processed foods, which are aggravating the problem? This will be a lifesaver to them. It's not a panacea. It's not a silver bullet. President Trump has also instructed us to address and end the root causes of chronic disease, and we're doing that. We're about to release dietary guidelines that are going to change the food culture in this country. They're going to change the kind of food the military gets. They're going to change the kind of food that our children get. We're releasing those in December. The Presidential Council for Physical Fitness is going to get more Americans into, particularly our children, into physical activity so that we can attack the root causes of this. But in the meantime, there's nothing more important than we can do than lower this price. As I said, it is the #1 cost of all drugs. This is the biggest drug in our country. That's why this is the most important of all the MFN announcements we've made. This is going to have the biggest impact on the American people. All Americans, even those who are not on Medicaid and Medicare, are going to be able to get the same price for their drugs, for their GLP drugs. This happened because of the vision of David Ricks, of Mike Dustar, and the other people, and the people on our team who figured out a way to align the interests of the shareholders of their company with the health of the American public. And it is a momentous accomplishment. It took months and months of negotiations, and I had a wonderful conversation with Mike Dustar about his experience, and he thanked me for the caliber of people who are on our side of the negotiating team. Chris Klump, who walked away from $1 billion business in order to join this administration, Emma Hernandez, David Brooks, and of course, Dr. Oz and Marty McGarry, who made this happen. They saw that this could be a win-win situation, that this was not a zero-sum game. The Biden administration tried to solve this problem unsuccessfully, I might add, by throwing $40 billion at it. They were able to achieve an agreement that will actually create savings for the American public. So we're making all of this available at a savings, and that's because the price of diabetes prescriptions is also going to drop. And the savings that we get from that are now going to make it available to people who do not have diabetes, people who have a BMI of 27 and above, or pre-diabetic, or have heart disease risk. They will be able to get it, but everybody will be able to get this drug, and it's going to change. We will lose, the American public, because of this agreement, will lose 125 million pounds by this time next year. Well, it is going to have dramatic effects on human health in this country. And I want to thank President Trump for his leadership. He said that I'd gotten a lot done as HHS secretary, but almost none of that is due to my ability. It's because I'm surrounded by people who are smarter than me, who are more able than me, and Those people came into the administration because they were inspired by President Trump. People like Chris Klump are here because they see this.
Do you think they are smarter than you and more able?
No. Believe me, they're a lot smarter than I am.
Why don't you take that job? He doesn't really mean that he's being modest, I promise you, but
it is true, unfortunately.
it's a beautiful thing.
But I want to thank you, Mr. President, because you've made me a success here by allowing me to attract these extraordinary people. And I want to again thank David Ricks, who we've been in this Oval Office again and again. You keep saying he's the smartest guy in industry, that he could talk a dog off a meat truck. But they came to the table, and Mike Newstart told me, he said...
You convinced people for 20 years that it was okay for Europe to pay $10 and for America to pay $140. That's why they make $45-50 million a year. He did. Finally, I said, I've had it, right? You did. He did. But anybody can do that, and they're entitled. But now it's down to what it should be.
And Mike Newstart told me what a pleasure it was to negotiate with people who were smart, who had common sense, who were able to put themselves in his position and hammer out this deal that is good for everybody. And it's great for the American public. I want to close again by just saying that this is a tool in the toolkit. It is not a silver bullet. It is an arrow in our quiver. It will allow a lot of people who are locked into high-risk obesity to finally lose weight, to reset, and then start doing the kind of things that will address the root causes of obesity. So I want to thank these extraordinary CEOs for sticking with us on this, for allowing us to make this happen. Mike Newstart said to me, he said, we've known we've had to do this for many years. We just haven't been able to get over the edge, and that this President Trump's order, his executive order, was a catalyst to do something that we always knew needed to be done. So again, thank you for your vision, for your commitment, and thank you to all the CEOs and all of my team for making this historic agreement happen.
Hey, Bobby, you haven't changed your view on Tylenol for women that are pregnant?
No. As I said.
There were some false reports out about Tylenol that Bobby changed his view. I don't think he's changed.
I'm not going to change until the science changes, and the science does not look like it's changing. It's getting stronger and stronger. Every day, what we recommend is that mothers, pregnant mothers, talk to their physicians, that the mothers of small kids talk to their physicians, and we've advised the physicians to reduce the thresholds and to reduce the amount of Tylenol that they give to children as much as possible, and only use it when it's absolutely critical.
Thank you.
So we're going to go through some of the deal points, but it does make itself clear that the real stake here is the forgotten man. President Trump, I believe you won the election because you remember the forgotten man. You speak to them, they hear you, they listen to you, and he connects well because he actually does things that materially change their lives. Secretary Kennedy spoke passionately, as he always does, about the problems with obesity. And just to put some very fine point numbers on this, obesity itself is responsible for half of all chronic disease and definitely generates more than a quarter of all the money we spend out of CMS, the $1.75 trillion that we spend annually. We need to address this tempest of dramatically increasing prices for health care, and you're not going to do it just by throwing money at the problem. You have to actually literally deal with the causes of the increase in price, and pharmaceutical prices are a part of that. They've been a part of it for a long time, but this president insisted that we address it. In fact, the first time I heard this directly from you, sir, was in January at Mar-a-Lago, where he took Secretary Kennedy, myself, Mr. Ricks, who you'll hear from in a second, to dinner, and demanded explanations for most favored nation pricing and what's wrong with it. And there was not a good reason against it. Now, MAHA is critical. America will have to get fit in order to right-size the healthcare system, and MAHA has the answers. It has obesity management through diet and exercise and sleep and dealing with issues related to that. And I want to say it as clear as I can, obesity is not an absence of GLP-1 drugs. We're all clear on that. But as Secretary Kennedy said, it is an arrow in our quiver that we must use and should use. The MAHA movement means making it easier for the right things to happen, easier for you to be healthy. If you're sitting at home and watching, that's what MAHA means to me. Reducing costs of the #1 most expensive medicine category in our country for Americans does just that. It is as MAHA as it gets. Today's the fourth MFN. President Trump highlighted the first three, leading U.S. company, leading European company. We've dropped infertility drugs, so we'll make lots of Trump babies, I'm hoping, by the midterms. But it's really about fairness. Fundamentally, it's fairness in pricing to Americans who have been getting ripped off, paying 3 times more than their European counterparts for the exact same product made in the same factory, in the same bottle, in the same packaging. We shouldn't be paying 3 times more, and we are no longer doing that. Fairness to the forgotten man also means dealing with the reality that they can afford a life-saving, life-changing drug that 10% or more of affluent Americans take, but folks without means can't manage it. Secretary Kennedy mentioned New York City. Actually, the #1 zip code is the Upper East Side, which is where you have property. And folks who know ritzy areas buy important real estate there because those real estate properties are worth a lot there. That should not be the #1 zip code in America for purchasing GLP-1 drugs. It speaks to the fact that we have an innately unfair system that penalizes folks who can use these medications the most, folks in the Rust Belt. Now, what are you supposed to do if the right thing to do for your health is right there, but you can't afford to get it? Folks need to be able to utilize these life-saving medications, and being fair about its distribution is essential. And we are democratizing access to these medications and dealing with a moral imperative to make sure that all Americans have access to avoiding all the obesity-related complications by making sure they can afford, if they do things right, not just MAHA-appropriate interventions, but also medications like this. In fact, we think these deals, and this part's very important, we believe these deals within 2 years, by the time the ink dries on these contracts that were signed earlier today, within 2 years, based on our health improvements, we will be budget neutral. These drugs will not cost us money. The American taxpayers will be getting their money back. That's how important it is for us to reduce the cost of health care in this country, especially when it's due to preventable problems like obesity. In addition, we have an update, Secretary Kennedy. We thought it was 125 million pounds. Mr. President, our estimate, based on the company numbers as well, is Americans will lose 135 billion pounds by the midterms. But I don't measure it in pounds. I measure it in saved lives. People can sleep again because they can breathe as when they go to bed. Folks whose knees don't hurt. People who don't have heart attacks, renal failure, dementia, all the things we know are associated with obesity and much more. This wouldn't have happened if we didn't have the right tools and had the ability with a team that has been spoken of early. So I want to call out Abe Sutton. He's in the back right there. He leads the CMS Innovation Center. It made the deal possible. And they are announcing today a new model, a brand new model aimed at getting to the vulnerable populations amongst us these medications. The forgotten man will be able to afford these drugs now. Governors will be thanking President Trump. They should be calling directly, sir, because they're going to be able to afford Medicaid next year in ways unimaginable, and they will stop crowding out education and other civil services. We cannot be a wealthy nation without being a healthy nation. That's why today's MFN deal is a historic step forward for all of America. And this is something that I don't think is partisan. There is no way you can argue against what just happened. These numbers to my side here, that's just Administrator McCary, who's been instrumental in this process as well. $1,350 baseline. Chris Klump will go through the numbers, but just focus on that 245, which is what he's going to point you to. And Chris Klump has been an unbelievable leader, an innovator. You've heard his name before. He's spoken here before, but he is continuing to change the face of CMS, and I love the fact that with his leadership, we're bringing a lot of wonderful people in. Inma Hernandez has been mentioned, John Brooks as well, and many others, including Beth Kelly, who runs the legal issues around these issues, because these guys are barracudas, Mr. President. They will take you down, slice you in little bits, and Howard's been there. It's no longer happening. You've got sharp folks. We're open for business. It's a generational opportunity to serve, and people are showing up. God bless you. Let me introduce now Chris Klump, who has just makes my life easier every day. I'm so proud of him.
All great deals are rooted in principles. We've talked about this before, and today we're announcing another truly great deal. I love this deal, and it's rooted in the principle of potential. This is about unlocking the full potential of every American, the grandmother, the grandfather, the father, the son, by unlocking access to affordable life-saving medications that make a meaningful difference in their lives when they need them most. That's what today delivers. It's a deal built on principle, for people, for the American people, and backed by policy that works. So the most important step to getting healthy is believing that your life has value, that God meant for each of us to have purpose and joy and to live fully. And to do that, we must be good stewards of our body. And the president has been fighting to provide another tool to do just this and enable this. And it's my pleasure to get to outline the contours of the deal today. So first and foremost, customary with the three prior announcements, all of the customary most favored nation terms that you've grown familiar with apply to these two deals. So this is actually deals 4 and 5. Full Medicaid portfolios today at most favored nation prices. Shared savings from existing drug prices in Europe deployed back to the United States. All primary care drugs at U.S. net prices or most favored nation prices available on Trump RX before the end of the year, and most importantly, all future drug launches across commercial, Medicaid, Medicare, and the cash markets at most favored nation prices going forward. Now, GLP-1s. So first, under this agreement, starting doses of oral GLP-1s will cost just $149 a month for everyone. That's roughly 1/8 the cost of the list price today. For Medicare, manufacturers are voluntarily reducing their prices for GLP-1s currently used for diabetes and other covered indications to $245 per month across all doses. The savings generated from this change in prices will be used to provide new coverage to obesity and those who struggle with obesity and also have high metabolic or cardiovascular risk. Again, all for the same $245 a month. That means Americans struggling with diabetes and obesity, with heart disease, or other chronic conditions can access these life-changing drugs more affordably. Medicare patients, importantly, will only pay $50 a month for a copay. This is a massive reduction from what happens today. For Medicaid, Novo and Lilly have agreed to extend the same new low government pricing to all 50 state Medicaid programs should they opt in. And we encourage them to opt in, and these will be available not just for diabetes and current covered indications, but also for obesity again. And in case you're getting tired of me saying it, at the same price of $245 a month, all covered doses. On Trump RX, the average price of injectables and orals will start at $350 on average. That's compared to roughly $500 today. And that will trend down to, you guessed it, the same $245 a month over the next 24 months. That is 1/5 of the list price. It is 1/2 of the best price in the United States today. We're hoping, Mr. President, that your friend who has to travel to England to afford these drugs will no longer need to do so and can come and do it in the United States. I'll also just mention that the $149 is $1 less than what you asked us to achieve. Just gonna make sure that's clear. So I want to highlight two other really important points that make me love this deal so very much. First, this isn't about spending more, it's about spending smarter. The savings from the diabetes drug price reductions are being used in a cost-neutral way to fund the new indications for taxpayers. That's amazing, and that happens inside of that same 24-month period. It's cost neutral. We're spending the money more wisely. But second, this isn't just about lower drug prices for Americans, though it does do that. But together with physical activity, with healthy eating and diet, and where appropriate, the use of breakthrough GLP-1s, the real return on investment is healthier Americans, lower chronic disease, lower costs, we estimate by tens of billions of dollars a year, and most importantly, higher productivity. Today is about freeing Americans from the weight, literally and figuratively, that holds us back. It's about unlocking the potential of every citizen to live fully, to contribute fully, and to find joy in their health. We cannot reach our full potential as a nation if we do not reach our full potential as individuals. And we cannot reach our full potential as individuals if we are not healthy. Thanks to Novo and Lilly for showing up so constructively over the last several months to make this possible. In particular, thanks to you, Mr. President, for again demonstrating that you fight for every American, this time for potential. It's now my sincere pleasure to first introduce Dave Ricks from from Lilly, and then Mike Dusto from Novo.
Great. Thank you, Chris. It's truly an honor to be here today for this historic step forward to expand access to a class of medications that can fundamentally change the arc of chronic disease in our country. Of course, these are the incretin or GLP-1 agonist that we've been speaking about. For nearly 150 years, my company, Eli Lilly, has been investing in America. We've been advancing science and creating high-value jobs. But today, oh, you okay? Gordon, you okay? Yeah.
Press out, press, we're going. Thank you, press. Press, right, guys. Cameras, we're done. Cameras. You guys. Press, step out, lead.